Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Infrastructure Matters number 58. And we have some of the new faces. You're going to see them on a regular basis because there's 4 of us now here. Diane Hinchcliffe, and he is up in Seattle at the airport. So, hello, early morning to you.
Yes, it is, but always fun to be here. Thanks.
And of course, we have the infamous Keith Townsend. Where are you?
I'm in Seattle as well. I'm just still at the hotel.
We're going to be talking about that. And I'm stuck here in beautiful Colorado, and Steve is someplace flying on a plane, so he can't join us today, but here we go. So our big theme today is going to be on AI because the guys were at this thing called the Amazon Generative AI Summit, and we also had AMD announcing a bunch of things. So we're going to be talking about AI, but the first thing we want to do is one other conference that was going on this week, which was the Smartsheet ENGAGE. And Diane, you were there. So what is Smartsheet and why should people even care about that?
Well, Smartsheet is the leading solution in what's called the collaborative work management space. So unlike project management, they actually help work get done. And they use the sheet model. That's why they're called Smartsheets. It's like a spreadsheet, but it's collaborative and many people can use it at once. They're really kind of entering a new chapter in their journey. They were public for 6 years on Wall Street and NASDAQ. They're now being taken private by Blackstone and Vista Equity Partners. And this allowed them to really focus on, now that their category is being really commoditized, everyone's entering the space. Atlassian and ServiceNow on the IT side have just added the same type of capability to their platform. Because it's how things like Jira tickets actually get turned into work. Is you structure it in Smartsheet. Everyone has their name assigned to it. You go out and do it. But they've really kind of are now not moving away from the sheet model, but they're really focusing. They're creating a new workspace approach that allows you to structure all your assets around a project, including all the sheets you use for a project, in one place. So that was one of the bigger announcements. And of course, they're also rolling out generative AI. That was very well received. If you haven't tracked Smartsheet, they have a cult following. They're extremely popular with their customers. The announcements were received, I would say, very well. The customers don't seem to be concerned about private equity taking them off the market. And I talked to their CEO, Mark Mader, who says that their investment partners are aligned with their very collaborative, open culture. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. I don't know, Keith, what did you see? When you were there?
Like as you mentioned, the very cult following. I mean, they announced the collection, and there was a round of roaring applause. So about 4,000 people. It was really shocking to see. But a couple of notes. One, these SaaS conferences are usually attended by people who are using the product, and that's refreshing. And the nature of this project are people who are working in PMOs, operation teams, disaster recovery teams, etc. And they were really, one, into the announcements, but two, very sober about AI and how they use AI. I talked to maybe 5 or 6 customers, and each one of them had either a plan for AI or using AI. And this was outside of IT, which I thought was an extremely interesting piece. And as a reformed project manager, I really appreciate the collections view, because the amount of time that I spent at PwC taking data out of sheets and et cetera, and putting that into PowerPoint just to provide an executive dashboard, I can see why people were excited about it.
I kind of, I haven't dived into these guys at all because there's a whole series of them that are producing this, but it's almost like, how we had Dropbox and share files, right? We created a system for sharing files, and now, those were just Word docs or sharing the files, and now we're sharing them in a much broader way, and using more intelligence. I'm not sure if it's AI or whatever, but more capability of collaborating. And I think this is just another movement forward in this very, very hybrid, geographically dispersed kind of world that we're dealing with. as well as making things simpler, as you said, if I can just drop it into my PowerPoint and that kind of stuff and not have to prepare for that. Cool. Okay, so let's go into the big topic of today, which is the AI situation. AI, and we get bored about talking about AI, but I think we got some big stuff to talk about today. So I know it's kind of like cybersecurity, AI. What do we? So here we are. Amazon held a generative AI summit, and I understand they brought analysts in from all over the world for this to attend, including you two. So why don't we talk about what are the top things that came out of there, and then we're going to kind of drop into some, what are the things that are going on that are really pressing the CIOs and the IT directors and the guys that are trying to implement these things. So, Dion, you want to take that first piece? The top.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'd love to have Keith weigh in as well. But Amazon really kind of brought us in to calibrate us for what is going to be coming out at reInvent at the end of the year. All of us will be there again, of course. They didn't have a lot of new announcements, but they really wanted to give us their point of view on how businesses can be successful with AI. What does it actually take? So they had a former CIO and now a cloud evangelist come out on the stage and really walk us through step by step, about data management, data strategy being foundational for executing on AI, how they look at it. And in the second session, that was the main session. The second session really focused on basically a lot of NDA topics that I can't get into in detail, but I can give you the gist of it without violating that NDA. And Amazon really is about model choice. So their whole Bedrock capability allows you to use one API to access all the models they offer and all the other public models. So they have Anthropic and Meta and Cohere and all the other popular AI models. And you can also put your own model in Bedrock and still use it via a single API. And they also have capabilities coming that allow you to dispatch AI requests to the most cost-efficient model that will still give you the results you're looking for. That's a hot topic. CIOs are very concerned about the cost of AI, not just from the actual bottom line cost, but also from the sustainability perspective. The AI models consume a lot of energy. We train and run them, and there's lots of concerns about that. So from an ESG perspective, as well as a budget perspective, people want cost-efficient models, and Amazon's trying to deliver that automatically. If you use Bedrock, they'll be able to route the requests to the most efficient model. And of course, they are now venturing into the hot topic where everyone really focused on, which is AI agents. So not just AI generating content, but AI taking action for you. So action models is a hot topic. Amazon didn't have any specific announcements, but they gave indications that we're going to see things reInvent around that, and they have to in order to stay competitive. Companies like Salesforce are using action models and agents as a competitive differentiator, and Amazon's always been playing defense on AI. It's very interesting. Really, Microsoft and Google have taken the lead in the conversation. And I think the summit was an attempt to kind of get out in front of that conversation and start owning that topic, at least in the analyst community. Keith, I don't know what you thought.
Yeah. So let me comment on your agent thing.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll pass over to Keith. The agent idea is an interesting idea because I was on a conference, Cetera, which is a global file system. It's a where people will share data all over the world and be able to rapidly bring it back. Heavily focused on the government institutions. They've got things are locked down. Because that's kind of a risky kind of area to be in. But one of the things they rolled out on that is they have an AI initiative, so the data intelligence piece of it, but they also rolled out with agents, assistants.
Interesting. Yeah.
So they have assistant personalities there, and they've got a lawyer personality, they've got a document personality, they have a marketing personality, they have a customer service personality. So it's, I guess what they're doing is they're creating ways or training these personalities in certain ways to pull the data through or something like that. Is that what's going on with these things? Is that what the assistants are?
They are. It's action models, which is what is the large language model you use for agents. They actually work on the APIs for you. So they'll call all the APIs to get the work done. So if you want to create a marketing campaign, it'll write the campaign for you, go to all your tools, create the campaign, and then send it out. I mean, it's amazing. So these agents actually take action directly on the IT systems that you make the request for. I think it's really the security and trust implications are enormous. And I think there's going to be very difficult for them to for organizations to really sort through all the issues. But the promise is enormous. The opportunity is great. So yeah, I'm super excited about them, but I have a lot of concerns. So we'll see how it plays out.
Well, I think it's like anything else that's automated. Initially, it presents you with the information, and I, as an expert, go through and look at the expert and say, that works, that works, that works, that doesn't work, throw it away, and train it. And then we go and then initially get to the point that we can let it automate. But maybe it just streamlines the process. So,
well, and that's what Amazon talked about. The humans in the loop will be key for to make agents successful early on, and of course, eventually you can get humans out of the loop once you trust it. So, yeah, exactly right.
Okay, so Keith, we've dominated the conversation. On to you about what happened over there at Amazon.
Yeah, so I spent some time with their accelerated compute team, their compute team, the storage team, as well as some of the Amazon Q team. And one of the themes that was clear is that Amazon has given a lot of thought about optionality when it comes to accelerate compute and AI. Seen for the first time in person, Inferentia and Gaviton 4. They had both chips out for display for us to take pictures of. It wasn't even in the NDA area. I was surprised.
And people don't even know how unusual that is. You cannot buy those chips. And I've never seen them before. And even the Amazon people there said they'd never seen them up close before. So
that was
only in the data center.
That was pretty cool. But one of the things that I really pushed back on them about or and around not just optionality is this idea that Amazon is being threatened by the private data center again. Over in the EU Competition Committee, Amazon announced that, or at least reported that data center has put pressures on their business, and they're seeing competition. Is that to stop from getting sued by the EU for monopoly, or is it real? I think our data is showing that it is real, that customers are considering private options over the public cloud. So I was asking a lot about lock-in. When we think about these chips, when we think about what AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA are trying to do at the software level to lock customers into software platforms that's tied to the hardware, Amazon is probably the, poster child for walled garden. And these solutions are extremely powerful and addictive. So when I all in Bedrock, what's my options for basically leaving? And Amazon, they were pretty forward in saying they want to make it so that you don't want to leave. That from a cost performance perspective, they expect to compete with any solution, and that they would they would keep pace of change and allow you to modernize in a way that's hopefully much easier than what we're seeing on the traditional IS side, and move to platforms and processors and accelerators that fit your needs, whether you're talking about inferencing or a lot about training on Inferentia.
So that's okay. So let's get to this other piece of it. We talked about, AMD had their announcements this week. They had their big conference. Patrick and Daniel were both down there, so there's a lot of, there'll be a lot of publication coming out on the very details. But maybe, Keith, you were tracking what they were rolling out, so maybe you can touch base on that, because what we want to kind of drill into is this issue that Diane, you raised, which is, right, we've had, NVIDIA has dominated the market. And now we're starting to see other companies bringing out other pieces, et cetera. What are the options for getting hold of Blackwell? What are the options for doing, is there really going to be competition here? And how does that competition look in terms of the GPU tech and the chips and such? So maybe, Keith, if you go through, talk a little bit about what you saw from the AMD release and what was going on.
Yeah, so I was following mainly Patrick and Daniel on X and trying to keep pace with some of the releases, some of the highlights. I think we can dive deeper into it maybe next week once we actually read the release and get some more detail and talk to Daniel and get the debrief. But a couple of really interesting pieces, stat that will help Dion in his conversation. Meta is deploying 1.5 million Epic CPUs in support of their MI300X GPU accelerator or AI accelerator that is exclusively used, or 405 Llama 405B, their 405 billion parameter model, exclusively runs on that. So that's an interesting stat for Dion to chew on a little bit later. And then the other big announcement coming out was that they have announced a new DPU, and they're all in Ultra Ethernet. This isn't a surprise for those of us that have watched the company. They bought a DPU company a few years ago. I'm surprised that it's taken this long to come out with an actual DPU, but this is in competition with, there's a consortium, the Ultra Ethernet Consortium has come together to basically battle NVIDIA and this ability to use Ethernet over the proprietary, somewhat proprietary solution that NVIDIA used for high-speed networking between GPUs. And I think there's going to be a lot to watch, especially for us ultra data center geeks around Ultra Ethernet.
Yeah, and we're seeing the battle coming out with that, with a whole bunch of those elements. We can also probably see eventually, the Broadcom kind of bring some of those pieces out as the battle continues for the Ethernet connections for the AI environment. I know there's still more talking about whether or not InfiniBand is going to exist in that, but probably not. It's probably going to go, because we're doing the east-west kind of design of these architectures as opposed to north-south, and they lend themselves more to the Ethernet technology, from what I understand. So one of the things we talked about is and you mentioned, Dion, that the market estimate coming out of AMD for AI chips was $1 trillion by 2030. That can't all be, hopefully, God, that's not all going to be. Maybe it would be. We have a lot of other people rushing to bring these things to bear into market. But, we've been in a supply issue because we've got one supplier pretty much, but we're also seeing some other people come out. You talk about, what are you looking at? How are you advising clients? What if you can't get your hands on the Blackwell?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So for those who aren't tracking, Blackwell is the next generation AI processor from NVIDIA. It's highly anticipated. There have been production problems, and they've had to redo the mask lately. Those are not for good signs, but it seems like they've gone through they've managed to get through that and are now shipping, because Microsoft just announced they have the first Blackwell chips in the public cloud this week. So that was major news. But the reality is NVIDIA's got 90% of the GPU market around AI chips. And the reason that is because they own the entire stack. They have an API called CUDA, which is a developer darling. Everyone likes it. Everyone's built their models around it, and it's very hard. It's the lock-in for AI, and it's very hard to move your code over to an entirely different stack. And so if you want to go with Intel chips, AMD, you want to go with Amazon's Inferentia and Trainium, which are two chips, one's for inference and one's for training AI models. They use entirely different APIs. And so there's a lot of reticence around moving your AI code, if you're building foundation models, moving away from the proven, very popular CUDA API for your AI, because we don't know how well Intel and AMD, and even to some extent Amazon, which they probably had the most notable success in the market, other than NVIDIA in terms of actual uptake. But you can't buy the chips; you can only use it through Amazon services. So it's very interesting. So what do you do? And you have to be contrarian, and you have to be willing to bet against the market if you want to use different AI chips. And so Blackwells are going to be constrained, and whatever's after it, going to be constrained for the foreseeable future with if these forecasts are correct. And we believe they are. So $1 trillion annual spend on AI chips is where the market is headed. That means that NVIDIA is going to sell everything they have and more. And they're going to be very constrained for the rest of the decade if this pace continues. And all signs are that it will. And so there are alternatives. And I would right now, I was hedging my bets. I'd tell organizations, don't get yourself locked into CUDA. Other chips are out there. Cerebras has the world's largest AI chip. It's an entire wafer. It's amazing. It's incredible. And it's actually kind of putting Moore's law back on track, but it uses its own API too. So the key is, I think if you want to be in AI long-term, don't get locked into a particular vendor. Start hedging your bets. Build an independence layer between your model and the API that you're using. And that will put you in good stead because NVIDIA is not likely to remain the only option given how constrained they're going to be in terms of popularity. So that's my take on it. I don't know, Keith, that'd be very interesting to hear what you say. The same with you, Campbell.
Yeah, so this is where middleware has a huge opportunity, this ability to sit in between the AI chip, low-level programming languages like CUDA, Intel, AMD, a little bit more open with and more progressive in their licensing around those languages or APIs. So if you've messed around with AI at all, whether you're talking about within one of the cloud providers or with one of the AI studio platforms like PyTorch, you don't see CUDA. You don't see the PyTorch does that for you, that translation for you. So you can go from one model to the next, from one GPU iteration to another. If you're developing at that AI level, at that PyTorch level, if you're doing those types of projects, those are the tools that's really impacted. Where are you going to see the difference? You're going to see the difference in performance. You can run the same models across different GPUs and see a difference in performance. A big question is, what are you going to use your AI for? Are you training models? If you're training models, you're probably not taking advice from the three of us. If you're doing AI inferencing, which is where the vast majority of the industry is going to go, I wouldn't be fixated on which GPU, which accelerator to use. You're going to have plenty of options. Don't wait on NVIDIA or the availability of NVIDIA if you see a market opportunity that's going to accelerate your.
We were talking about, how do you get your hands on, fill in the blank GPU kind of situation. And since I work in the data world, one of the problems is that your data is here and the GPU is here. And so, which is one of the reasons why, you earlier talking about whether or not we're going to go on-prem or in the cloud, is because data has gravity and we don't particularly like to move it. And then and it can get very costly if you then take it out of the cloud on the back side. So what we're seeing, some of the implementations that we're seeing from the data storage people is enabling through the snapshots or through the mirroring or through whatever it is constantly keeping updated, maybe a system that sits right next to the Amazon environment or the Microsoft environment, but the data is actually sitting in the Equinix colo. Because you hold on to your data, then I don't lose my data, but I'm able to have that speed of connection back to the processors that are over there. So those are some, that is one of the strategic kind of things that people are looking at as they're looking at privacy and how do you access when your primary data center is someplace else and where the transaction is going. So I look at other strategies and technologies to get it over there. So that is, we'll see if that kind of strategy works with any of the guys and where they're going. And Keith, what I really liked what you said is that is this issue of is a single GPU really driving all the decisions about what you're implementing and how you're implementing, and the issues on training, the issues on RAG, having data ready to feed into the inference engine, et cetera, is a huge issue. and probably has almost a stickier problem than just getting a hold of the GPUs systems. So it's we have a raft of problems here. Stop there for any comments.
Well, I think it's just interesting. Organizations will want to get their hands on their own GPUs if they want to run their models locally. And there's, of course, a lot of reason to do that is controlling and protecting your data and ensuring privacy. Taking and preserving PII, personally identifiable information. We don't necessarily, most organizations, especially large companies, don't want to release this information into the public AI models, not knowing for sure what's going to happen to them. There can be accidents and data spills. They'd rather not have the information get out there into the AI ecosystem where they can control it. So that's driving a lot of the enterprise demand is saying, we want AI, but for many of our most important AI tasks, we are not going to use public models, and we will use private models of our own data and running our own inference on our own models. And that's going to drive, I think, a lot of the trying to figure out how you're going to accelerate the AI and make it cost effective.
Yeah,
and
then we're seeing AI models being shrunken down to run on a phone. It really does matter what you're trying to accomplish. We're fixated as an industry on GPUs and accelerators that are separate from the CPU, but Intel, AMD, the cloud providers have really done a really good job of putting accelerators built into the instruction set of the GPU or of the CPU itself. So especially if we're looking for a model that's probably going to be closer to what we're going to implement in enterprise and most use cases for most agents, around 7 billion parameters, depending on the scale of your projects, CPUs might just be fine.
And, when you start thinking about, and this is where I'm going with it, is as we have inference engines that are doing real-time ingestion of data, real-time RAG information that goes in there that has to generate a response based upon, a user hitting the website or, asking a query, et cetera, as opposed to more of a recommendation engine or something like that line. The speed matters, but is there a point somewhere along the speed of the GPU is enough by the enterprise? I mean, is that a possibility?
Absolutely. This is where tokens per second matter. This is easy math. The average human, I think, reads about 33 words per minute. That is much faster. That is much slower than a CPU can serve up a 7 billion parameter model. You can probably get about 15 users per second in an average CPU for that average model. So unless you're talking about massive scale of AI, there is a point where enough GPU matters. We're fixated on Bluefield and a bunch of newer GPUs, but the L4, the L40s, these lower level GPUs from NVIDIA are much less capable than an H200 or a Blackwell chip, and they're perfectly fine positioned to the enterprise. So Gaudi from Intel, 300 series from AMD, Grok has come up with some inference-focused AI chips. We're going to see plenty of options for the enterprise, especially when it comes to inferencing.
Right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me this morning for Infrastructure Matters. And thank you all for listening in. We appreciate it. Make sure to click, follow, share, do all those things. And we will see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.